Welcome everybody to 8 Minutes to Chew On. We are still in the book of Galatians, and Pastor, you preached yesterday about faith. The righteous shall live by faith.
Yeah.
And we're going to chat a little bit around that this morning. Pastor, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to living by faith, I remember growing up as a young believer and being taught that, you just have to ask God for whatever you want and have faith. And the example was, if you want a red Ferrari, you need to pray, but be specific.
Yeah.
Lord, I want a red. Because if you don't say red,
Yeah.
then God probably is not going to answer that prayer. And we were taught that's what faith is. Faith is just claiming whatever you want and then just trusting God for it. So maybe you can just discuss what is real faith?
Yeah, I think, Nick, that's where so often when it comes to these things, and although it sounds stupid, but it was very real.
Yeah.
Today it sounds stupid, but it was, and for some people it's still very real. You actually put the number plate numbers down as well, and so specific with God. Like God can't just work it out by himself.
Yeah.
I think some of those things we try to use God for our greed. And for some it worked, but those same people are normally people who ran businesses, who could up their sales and buy the stuff and so on. The average guy on the street is trusting God for his daily provision, is trusting God to make it, is trusting God to just feed their families and so on. And so often I would say to people who had these claims about Ferraris and so on, and I'm not saying that God doesn't bless people like that. I think sometimes he does for some reason. Abraham was a very wealthy man, but then Paul wrote that he knew to be satisfied when he had nothing, when he was shipwrecked, and so on. So I think we must be very careful that we don't use God like a lotto machine or like a one-arm bandit machine where you just put a coin in, pull, and God will respond. That's not God. It's relational, and it's He provides. He looks after us. He does what He needs to do and wants to do, and sometimes more for you and less for me, but I'm satisfied. I think we must be very careful that those, let's call it overboard kind of things, because actually in reality, it disappoints a lot of people. It does, because it doesn't happen for them. You can go back, and it was a stage that the church went through, and it's still for many people like it, unfortunately. But you go back to those people who name it and claim it and frame it, like we used to say, and you will see that many of them have been disappointed. Some of them have even turned away from the faith because God doesn't operate like that. He says, I will meet all your needs according to my riches in glory, not your greeds. The need in informal settlement is different to the need maybe in a northern suburb. The need in Ethiopia, where it's survival need, is different to your and my need. So how do you go to a guy in Ethiopia and say to him, listen, but trust God that He will give you a Ferrari? I mean, first of all, you'll find Ferrari Camel there, but not a Ferrari. So I think when you start putting things in context like this, you actually see how stupid we are when we start going overboard. We trust God to meet all our needs. That's the faith. We trust God for our healing. That's faith. We trust God to maybe for an increase in salary or a better job and so on. That's faith. But when you start claiming excesses, you got to be careful. And I'm not saying the wealthy are not blessed by God. I think they are. And for some reason, God does. And it's not because He favors them more than others. It's for some reason they are. They have the ability to create wealth. So often they keep it when they should be giving it. But faith for me is a daily relationship, daily walk with God. And like I said yesterday as well, we in this mode where we sometimes think, I don't have that kind of faith. But the same person prays, Lord, heal me. That's faith. Lord, provide for me. That's faith. And that faith eventually is credited to our account, if I can put it like that. And God answers it and respects that.
Amen.
And He loves it.
Amen. Yesterday you spoke a little bit about, there was a quote, I think it was Martin Luther King Jr., where it basically just said that, sometimes faith is taking that first step on a staircase where you don't know where the staircase is leading.
Yes.
And I thought maybe to encourage some people, it was very encouraging yesterday when you shared it, just to a little bit about maybe the church's story, taking that first step and then just trusting God and seeing how God works and moves.
You won't believe it, but I did go to the gym this morning, and I spoke to somebody about tithing. He approached it. I don't, because and he said, you know what? I tithe, but sometimes it's difficult. That's a step of faith you take and say, Lord, I'm going to give my tithe. Let's start there because I'm going to give my tithe and trust you that with the 90% you've given to me, I will make it. That's that first. I don't know I'm going to, but I do. I'm taking that step of faith. As a church, when we bought this place, you were here. Were you?
Well,
it was around about the time.
Around about the time.
We had no money. So sometimes people would think, isn't it stupidity to buy all of this stuff with no money? But that's when...
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to misunderstand. You clearly heard God
Oh, yes.
about this place
And
before
that's
you made
why,
that step.
and that's why I could hold on to what I believe God had spoken. And it was not only to me. He had spoken to others, or when I shared it, he confirmed it. And so we were all in the same faith boat. It wasn't me telling people you must do this and that. As a leadership at that time, we felt we couldn't, but it's the right thing to do. God will come through. And I think that's why we took that step of faith. We have seen God. I think it was once in all my years of ministry that I had taken my salary late because God has always provided our needs. We don't have major bank balances, but we have been, and now I'll say it boldly, we have been a church in this area or maybe in a broader area that has given away more than many other churches. And it doesn't make us any better, but that's the way we live. And so often I've said to the Lord, Lord, you've told us our storehouse will be full. Our barn will be full to overflow. So we've always got enough to meet our needs and give. And we have given. And that's the level of faith. Even sometimes we come to a place where somebody is in need, a pastor is in need outside of our church or another congregation. And I just say, yes, let's do it, knowing that we probably don't have the money to do it. And God has always been faithful. And I think that's that first step. When you take that step of faith, where it's not greed you're feeding, it's need you're feeding. And you take that first step of faith and say, Lord, I'm going to trust you. You see my heart. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to believe that you have spoken. I believe you have spoken to me. And therefore I can trust you. That's a difference than in just having a new car or a new house at the beach and you're saying, I'm going to take a step of faith. I think greed we must be very careful about. But steps of faith, it says that this kind of faith pleases God. So God smiles when you know, hey, humanly speaking, this is probably a little bit stupid, but I'm trusting you. And look what we have. We owe nothing on these buildings except the new ones we bought just before COVID. And I'm trusting God to pay that off as well. So thank God for that. That first step is often so important, but very difficult. Because you're going to now continue in walking in that direction. You can't chop and change all the time.
No, it's encouraging. So we want to encourage you, whatever God's leading you, that step God's leading you to take, why don't you put your faith in God? Because as we saw yesterday, faith pleases God.
Yeah.
And so we want you to live a life that honors and pleases God. And trust Him. That's often the biggest step is the first one. Yeah. And then God begins to move. And so we want to encourage you to join us on Sunday at our 8:30 and 10:30 service. This Sunday, we're having a Christmas market at our evening service, so that will start at 4 p.m. So come through with your family and come and spend Sunday afternoon with us. And be blessed. We're trusting God, as Rudolph said yesterday. His faith, as he prays for you, we trust God that our faith, as we trust God for you, that God will move powerfully in your life. Have a fantastic week.
Hi there. We hope you got so much value out of this week's 8 minutes to chew on. If you would like to listen to the full sermon, you can click the link in the description or you can visit our YouTube channel, The Barn Christian Fellowship. If you would like further resources, or maybe you would just like someone to pray with you, pray for you, or maybe even someone to chat to, you can visit our website, thebarn.co.za. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, or if you're listening to this through the podcast, you can leave us a review. We'll see you at church.